Imagine it is late at night. You signal, you pull over, and the officer walks up and says something that sounds friendly. Curious? Where are you coming from? Most people answer automatically. Coming from work, coming from my friend's house, coming from the airport. But for immigrants, visa holders, and undocumented people, that one sentence can open doors you did not mean to open. It can create inconsistencies. It can lead to more questions. And in some cases, it can even trigger an ICE referral or a call to a federal agency, depending on the jurisdiction and the situation. In this video, you are going to walk away with 3 things. First, what you must do during a traffic stop and what you do not have to do. Second, the most common verbal and document traps that turn a simple stop into a bigger problem. And third, a short response you can memorize to protect yourself from self-incrimination while still staying calm and respectful. Here is the part most people miss. A traffic stop is not a casual conversation. It is a legal event, and every answer you give becomes information the officer can use to extend the stop, look for other violations, or claim they now have reasonable suspicion to dig deeper. Officers are trained to use small talk to observe your body language, your story, and whether you contradict yourself. That does not mean every officer is bad. It means the system is built to collect information. So your job is to give only what the law requires and nothing extra. Now, before we go any further, a quick clarity point. Rules vary by state, by local policy, and by the exact facts. Some places have different rules about what you must identify, and some have different cooperation practices with federal immigration enforcement. So what I am sharing is general information and a safety-first protocol. If you have a specific case, talk to a qualified attorney and verify with official sources. With that said, let's talk about what changed nothing and what changed everything. What changed nothing is this. The basic structure of a traffic stop is the same for citizens and non-citizens. You can be asked to provide certain documents. You can be cited. And you can be arrested if there is probable cause for an arrestable offense, like a warrant or certain crimes. What changes everything for immigrants is that small admissions can connect the stop to immigration status, work authorization, travel history, or identity questions that do not help you and can hurt you. And in the real world, once immigration comes into the conversation, it is harder to put it back in the box. So what are your core rights in plain English? Number 1, you generally have the right to remain silent about questions that go beyond identification and the immediate purpose of the stop. Number 2, you generally have the right to refuse consent to search your car or your phone. Number 3, you have the right to ask if you are free to go once the purpose of the stop is done. And number 4, you have the right to stay calm, be polite, and not resist physically, even if you believe the stop is unfair. Here is the bridge hook. The biggest mistakes happen in the first 60 seconds when your brain tries to be helpful. Now, let's separate what you usually must provide from what you should not volunteer. In many traffic stops, the officer can ask for your driver's license, vehicle registration, and proof of insurance. Those are the classic 3. If you are driving and you have them, you typically provide them. If you do not have them, you do not make up a story. You can say you do not have it with you. If you are asked for your name and date of birth, in many places you provide that. In some states, there are stop and identify laws that require you to identify yourself under certain conditions. So do not turn a traffic citation into an arrest for obstruction by being combative. But there is a huge difference between identifying information and explaining your entire day. Which brings us to trap number 1, the work authorization confession. This is why "where are you coming from" can be dangerous. If you are undocumented, or you are on a visa that does not allow employment, or you are on a tourist status like B1, B2, or ESTA, saying "I'm coming from work" can create a problem. Even if you were doing something informal, even if you were just helping a friend, even if you were paid cash for a few hours. You may think you are just making conversation, but you are potentially giving an admission about unauthorized employment or status issues. To be clear, not every casual answer automatically becomes a legal conviction, but you are handing them a thread they can pull. And once that thread is pulled, now the officer can ask, "Where do you work? How long have you worked there? Do you have authorization? Do you have papers? What's your immigration status?" And you are now in a conversation you never needed to be in. Here is the myth versus reality. Myth: if I tell the officer I am coming from work, they will trust me and let me go. Reality: you just gave them a reason to ask more questions that have nothing to do with a taillight or speed. Trap number 2 is the lying trap. A lot of people think, fine, I will just lie. I will say I am coming from my cousin's house, or I will say I'm unemployed, or I will say I am a student even if I am not. This is where people get denied, arrested, or charged, because lies create inconsistencies. Officers ask the same question multiple ways. They may ask, "Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Who were you with? How long were you there?" And when the answers do not match, they may claim you are being evasive or deceptive. In some situations, lying to law enforcement can become its own legal issue, and even if it is not charged, it can be used as justification to prolong the stop or escalate. So the safest approach is not to lie and not to overshare. It is to stay within your rights and keep answers minimal. Here is the part most people miss. You do not have to choose between lying and giving your life story. There is a third option, and it is silence plus respectful boundaries. Trap number 3 is the voluntary document trap. This is a big one for immigrants. Officers may ask, "Do you have any other ID? Do you have your passport? Do you have your visa? Do you have your green card? Do you have your work permit?" If you are driving, the stop is about driving. Your legal presence in the US is usually not the subject of a routine traffic stop unless something else triggers it. When you volunteer immigration documents, you can accidentally create new questions. Is the document valid? Does the name match? Is the entry stamp old? Is the visa expired even though your status is not? Are there inconsistencies in your address? Are you carrying a foreign passport that leads to nationality questions? Again, that does not mean you should hide your identity. It means you should not hand over documents that are not required unless a lawyer has advised you to, or unless the law clearly requires it in that context. Another related trap is consent. An officer might say, "Mind if I take a quick look in the car?" Or, "Do you have anything illegal?" Or, "You do not mind if I check your trunk, right?" Many people say yes because they think refusing makes them look guilty. But consent is one of the easiest ways a routine stop becomes a search. If there is no probable cause and no warrant, your consent is often what makes the search legal. So a simple, calm response matters. Myth versus reality number 2. Myth: if I refuse a search, I will be arrested. Reality: refusing consent is not by itself a crime. They may still search if they have another lawful basis, but you do not have to give permission. Now let's talk about the 100-mile border zone, because this is heavily misunderstood online. People hear 100 miles and think the Constitution disappears. That is not accurate. The phrase refers to an area where certain federal authorities, especially related to border enforcement, have expanded operational presence and certain checkpoint activities can occur. But it does not automatically mean any officer can do anything, anytime, anywhere. Your basic rights still exist. What changes in practice is that you may encounter more CBP activity, more checkpoints, and more questions about citizenship or immigration status in specific settings. If you are near the border or near an airport corridor and you encounter a federal checkpoint, the experience can feel very different from a city traffic stop. Here is the key. Do not assume that because you are within 100 miles, you must answer every question beyond basic identification. And do not assume that because you are outside 100 miles, immigration will never come up. Reality is messy, so focus on what you can control: your behavior, your words, and your documentation plan. Here is a micro hook. In the next part, I will explain how long a traffic stop is allowed to last, because that is where many people get pressured into talking. There is a U.S. Supreme Court case often discussed in this context, Rodriguez v. United States. The general principle people take from it is that an officer cannot extend a completed traffic stop beyond the time needed to handle the traffic reason, just to investigate unrelated matters without additional reasonable suspicion. In plain English, if the ticket or warning tasks are done, they should not keep you there just to fish for something else. Now, this does not mean an officer can never ask extra questions. They can ask. The key issue is whether the stop is being prolonged without proper basis. That is why one of the most powerful questions you can ask calmly is, "Officer, am I free to go?" If they say yes, you leave. If they say no, you know you are being detained, and you should switch fully into a minimal, rights-protective mode. Example scenario number 1. Let's say you are on an H-1B and you are driving home from dinner. You get stopped for rolling through a stop sign. The officer asks, "Where are you coming from?" You answer, "Just dinner." They ask, "Where do you work?" You answer, "A tech company nearby." They ask, "What do you do?" You answer. Then they ask, "Are you legal? Do you have papers?" You feel pressured, and you start explaining your visa, your employer, your petition, and your address. Even though you are lawful, you can still create confusion. Maybe your driver's license address is old. Maybe your I-797 copy is not with you. Maybe the officer mishears your employer name. Now you have a longer stop, more stress, and more risk of a wrongful escalation. The safer approach is to keep the stop about the stop. License, registration, insurance, and minimal conversation. Example scenario number 2. Let's say you are undocumented and you are stopped for a broken taillight. The officer asks, "Where are you coming from?" If you say, "I'm coming from work," that can lead to a chain of questions about your job, your identity, and your status. If you lie, you might contradict yourself. If you argue, you might escalate. The goal is to stay calm, comply with required driving document requests as best you can, and avoid self-incriminating statements. Now let's get practical. Here is the step-by-step strategy when you get pulled over. Step 1. Safely pull over, signal, and stop in a well-lit place if possible. Keep your hands visible. Turn off the engine. Roll down the window enough to communicate. Step 2. Do not reach around the car when the officer is approaching. If your documents are in the glove box, wait, and then tell the officer, "My registration is in the glove box. Is it okay if I reach for it?" Step 3. Provide the required driving documents if you have them: license, registration, insurance. Step 4. Keep your answers short. You can be polite without being detailed. Step 5. If asked questions like, "Where are you coming from? Where are you going? Who are you with?" you use your boundary line. This is where the 5-word response comes in. Memorize this. I choose to remain silent. That is 5 words. You can also add, "Officer, I choose to remain silent," if you want to be extra respectful. But the core is the 5 words. And then you stop talking. Here is why it works. You are clearly invoking your right. You are not lying, and you are not volunteering information. This is the part most people miss. Silence is a skill. You have to practice it, because in the moment your nerves will try to fill the air. Now, some viewers will ask, Will staying silent make the officer angry? It might, but it is still a right, and it is often safer than improvising answers. You can keep your tone calm and non-confrontational. You are not arguing the law on the roadside. You are simply declining to discuss your day. Here is myth versus reality number 3. Myth: if I am innocent, I should answer everything. Reality: even innocent statements can be misunderstood, misrecorded, or used to justify more investigation. Next, what if the officer escalates? What if they say, "If you have nothing to hide, just answer." Or they say, "Step out of the car." Or they say, "I'm going to call ICE." First, if you are ordered to step out, do not resist. Courts have allowed officers to order drivers out during stops in many circumstances. You comply physically. Second, if they ask to search, you can say, "I do not consent to a search." Calm voice. Repeat once if needed. Third, if they ask immigration questions directly, you can return to the same boundary. "I choose to remain silent." You can also ask, "Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" If you are free to go, leave. If you are detained, keep your words minimal. If you are arrested, you ask for a lawyer and you stop talking. If you are not a US citizen and you are worried about your status, do not sign documents you do not understand. Ask for an interpreter if you need one. Now let's talk about documents, because this is where people panic. Many immigrants ask, "What documents must I show?" For driving, it is typically the driving documents. In many states, you must have a valid driver's license to drive, and if you do not, that itself can lead to citations or arrest depending on the state and circumstances. But the bigger point is, do not hand over extra documents just because you have them. If you are a lawful permanent resident, there is a federal requirement to carry proof of registration in the US, and many people interpret that as carrying their green card. In real life, you should discuss with an attorney what you should carry day to day, and how to balance risk of losing documents with compliance. If you are on a visa status, carrying a passport everywhere can also be risky if you lose it. So think in terms of copies, secure storage, and attorney guidance. But at the stop itself, do not let an officer pressure you into giving your entire immigration file on the roadside. Here is a clean, "Do this and avoid this" checklist you can save. Do this. Keep your license, registration, and insurance accessible. Do this. Keep your hands visible and your movements slow. Do this. Be polite. Use "yes, sir" or "no, mom" if that feels natural, and keep your voice calm. Do this. Ask, "Am I free to go?" once the ticket or warning is handled. Do this. If you need to invoke rights, use a simple line like "I choose to remain silent" and "I do not consent to a search." Avoid this. Explaining your immigration status to a local officer during a routine stop unless required, and you have legal guidance. Avoid this. Saying you are coming from work if you are not authorized to work, or you are not sure how it could be interpreted. Avoid this. Lying or making up stories. Avoid this. Consenting to searches because you feel pressured. Avoid this. Arguing the law or physically resisting. Now, what should you do after the traffic stop? This is the crucial step many people skip. As soon as you are safe, write down everything you remember: the time, the location, the reason given, the officer's name and badge number if you saw it, what was asked, what you answered, whether you were told you were free to go, and whether you were searched. If you received a ticket, note the court date and deadlines. If you believe your rights were violated, consider speaking with a qualified attorney or a reputable rights organization in your area. If there was any mention of immigration, ICE, or CBP, do not ignore it. Get legal advice quickly, because timing matters. Here is a small detail that changes everything. If you move, change phones, or miss mail, you can miss notices. Keep your contact information consistent and monitor your situation carefully. Now, a special note for green card holders and visa holders. If you are a green card holder, you may feel you have nothing to worry about. And most of the time, you are right. But green card holders can still face issues if there are old warrants, certain criminal charges, or if an officer claims you made a false statement. So the same advice applies. Do not volunteer extra, do not consent to searches casually, and do not guess your way through legal questions. If you are on a non-immigrant visa like H-1B, F-1, B-1, B-2, or ESTA, remember that status can be complicated. A visa stamp expiration is not always the same thing as being out of status, but roadside conversations are not the place to explain that nuance. Keep it simple. If you are asked something you are not required to answer, you can stay silent. If you are asked to produce a document you do not have, say you do not have it with you. Do not present fake documents. That can have severe consequences. Myth versus reality number 4. Myth: if I am respectful, I must answer. Reality: respectful silence is still respectful, and it is often the smartest move. Now let's bring it back to the original question. Where are you coming from? The safest approach is to avoid giving a narrative. You can either stay silent using the 5-word line, or you can give a very minimal, non-incriminating response, and then stop. But since minimal can still be risky depending on your situation, the cleanest protective answer for many people is the boundary. I choose to remain silent. Then you focus on the purpose of the stop, the citation or warning, and getting out safely. Final recap. Keep this simple and calm. 1. A traffic stop is not a casual chat, so do not overshare. 2. Do not confess to work or status facts that can be used against you. 3. Do not lie, because inconsistencies escalate stops. 4. Do not volunteer immigration documents or consent to searches unless legally required or advised. 5. Memorize the 5 words. I choose to remain silent, and pair it with, am I free to go? When appropriate. If you found this helpful, subscribe and turn on notifications. I cover practical, plain English immigration and travel rules so you can protect your family without panic. And if you want, share this video with one person in your community, because the best time to learn this is before the flashing lights are behind you.